Warnera Wallace is a cold case homicide detective who's been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Dateline, and Court TV. Now, we join him as he applies his investigative skills to making a case for Christianity.
As I investigated Jesus' influence on the fallout of the Common Era, I began to notice the impact Jesus had not just on education, art, and science, but also on other religions, even those who rejected the claims of Christianity. Consider for a moment the appearance of Jesus in history. His explosive entry on our timeline was preceded by the fews we've already discussed. After Jesus inaugurated Christianity, several other world religions and spiritual worldviews also appeared on the timeline in the fallout, including Islam, Baha'i, and New Age spirituality. Would it surprise you to discover that the religions that followed Jesus in history modified themselves in response to him, mentioned his life and ministry, or even merged him into their worldview? Probably not. We should expect Jesus to appear in other theistic systems based on his global influence. But what about the religious systems that preceded Jesus in history? It would be even more surprising to discover these ancient religions also modified, mentioned, or merged Jesus into their worldviews. As it turns out, that's exactly what they did. You'd be justified in asking, how could these earlier religions acknowledge or include Jesus if he hadn't yet been born? While it's true the earliest worshipers of these deities knew nothing about Jesus, by the time these faith systems progressed into the Common Era, they found themselves accommodating Jesus in one manner or another. Some responded by modifying their practices and beliefs to mimic Christianity. Some simply mentioned Jesus, and others found a way to merge him into their worldview. Let's begin by examining the response of religions that preceded Jesus in history. Hinduism traces its roots back to the Iron Age of India from the 12th to 6th centuries BCE. Modern Hindus acknowledge Jesus and have merged him into their worldview. Hindus consider Jesus a sadhu, an acharya, believing him to be a holy man and a teacher, often calling him an Aishu or Hindu saint. By acknowledging him in this way, 1.16 billion Hindus throughout the globe have had the opportunity to hear about Jesus, even if just within the context of Hinduism. Let's turn now to Buddhism. Most Buddhists acknowledge and respect Jesus' self-sacrificial life. For this reason, many refer to Jesus as an enlightened man and wise teacher. Even more significant, their current Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, has described Jesus as a bodhisattva, a term used to describe someone who is on the journey toward Buddhahood, but has delayed his journey to nirvana out of compassion for others who are suffering. Buddhist leaders have also written publicly about biblical accounts of the life of Jesus. 506 million Buddhists know something about Jesus from the teaching of their leaders. But there's more. While it's true that many of the religious systems preceding Christianity modified, mentioned, or merged Jesus into their worldview, the religions that followed Jesus also incorporated Jesus in one way or another. The Islamic faith was founded by the Prophet Muhammad in the early 7th century. Muhammad claimed that while Jewish prophets and Jesus were true prophets of God, monotheism had been corrupted by Judaism and Christianity. He intended to restore it. As a result, Muslims acknowledge much about Jesus, even though they reinterpret the New Testament to suit their purposes. Muslims believe Jesus is a prophet, worthy of reverence, is a messenger of God, is the Messiah, will sit beside God during final judgment, and will return again in the future. 1.9 billion Muslims know something about Jesus based on how he is described in the Quran. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, claimed to be a messenger and manifestation of God. Because of his perspective about religious history, Baha'u'llah accepted many of the claims of Christianity and also affirmed and mentioned many characteristics about Jesus. But even though Baha'u'llah reinterprets all of these things in his own way, it's clear that Jesus matters deeply to the 5 million Baha'i throughout the globe. And that isn't all. Other faith systems like the Hare Kryszna movement and the New Age movement seek to integrate Jesus in some way. The impact of Jesus on global faith systems cannot be overestimated. If every New Testament manuscript were destroyed, we would still be able to reconstruct the central truths of Jesus from the common acknowledgments of competing religious systems. If you wanted to remove any trace of Jesus from human history, you'd also have to scrub the scriptures and statements of religious people all over the world. Jesus deeply matters to religious people everywhere, even if they do not claim a Christian identity. Consider for a moment the impact Jesus had on the world, even in regions dominated by non-Christian worldviews. Roughly 5.89 billion non-Christians today know something about Jesus, even if they've never read a page of the New Testament. Virtually every corner of the known world has heard about Jesus in one way or another from non-Christian scriptures. For people who are interested in God, spirituality, or religion, Jesus is a great place to start. You'll find him on more than the pages of the New Testament. I thought about the way in which other religions have recognized Jesus when I was reading one of Jesus' most significant claims. In John 14:6, Jesus said, "No one comes to the Father except through me." Jesus didn't make room for other religions, other gods, or paths to salvation. He didn't accommodate them in any way. He never even referred to them. While the person of Jesus infiltrated other religious worldviews, none of the gods, prophets, mystics, or leaders of these other systems managed to penetrate the worldview taught by Jesus. The religions of the world made room for Jesus, but Jesus never budged. Maybe this was because all the other religions aren't true. I found myself back at the beginning, wondering how that pastor could be so confident that Jesus mattered. Maybe it was because the pastor knew something about the fuse and the fallout of the Common Era. Maybe he knew Christianity was true. The more I studied this evidence, the more I began to question all my presuppositions about Jesus in the New Testament. The things I valued most as an atheist and as a creative, literature, arts, music, education, science, had been forever changed by the explosive impact of Jesus. There was simply no denying this truth. Jesus and his followers transformed the development of these disciplines. Take a look at all the historical figures from the first century. Nero, Josephus, Herod, Virgil, Dionysius, or other significant national leaders from all of history, like Alexander the Great, or Genghis Khan, or Julius Caesar, or Charlemagne. Or other myths, deities, or religious leaders from history, like Osiris, or Zeus, or Buddha, or Gandhi. Why was it that Jesus had more impact on human history than anyone else? Think about it. Jesus was born in a tiny, irrelevant town in the Roman Empire. He had to walk from one place to the next and never traveled more than 200 miles from the town where he grew up. He had none of the resources people use today to make an impact. No social media, no podcast audience, no website. He didn't even have the resources people used in the first century to make an impact. He never held a political office, never ruled a nation, never led an army, or never penned a book. His family was insignificant. The locals suspected he was an illegitimate son. His mother was a poor peasant woman, and his father couldn't afford much. Jesus didn't receive an expensive education, never married, never had children, never owned a home, and didn't possess much more than the clothes on his back. As an adult, his ministry lasted just 3 short years. Public opinion turned against him. Most of his followers abandoned him. One betrayed him, another denied him. He was rejected by the religious, hunted by the powerful, mocked and persecuted by his enemies. He suffered an unfair trial, was publicly humiliated, was brutally beaten, and unduly executed in the most horrific way. Even then, the few followers who remained had to borrow a grave to bury him. Yet, this was the man who changed history, inaugurated the Common Era, forever transformed human culture. How is it possible that a single man, a man like Jesus, could have this kind of impact?